Dear Santa, firstly, I'd like to say that I'm honored that you would finally consider me for the Christmas delivery team. It's everything I've ever wanted in my entire life. Secondly, however, I made a friend recently, and she said that if I don't stick up for myself, I'll be a pushover whiny baby my entire life. And that she would also make me chew on glass. So, unfortunately, I have to decline your offer to guide your sleigh tonight. I'm sorry. Sincerely, Ru. What have I done? Oh, God. You have to fix this right now. Hello?
Weakening your resolve already, Ru?
Grinch-Julia, is that you?
Who else would it be?
How did you know that?
The hairs on my left big toe decided to rise. This can mean only one thing.
Ah.
Cold feet. Specifically, hooves.
That's, accurate. I'm wondering if maybe we can stick up for ourselves next year. I've never exactly rebelled before.
Yes, I know. Your general demeanor leans more towards a silver lining-seeking pushover, so I figured, you could use some help. After all, you know what I said. What do I say?
If we don't stick up for ourselves, nobody will, because we're the Christmas weirdos.
Exactly. We're out of pride. Anyway, I did this thing last year, which served as an excellent distraction from this hideous time of the year. No offense to your entire reason for being, of course. I have planned something special just for you.
Oh, you did?
I've organized everything.
You did?
I have captured guests.
What do you mean you've got guests?
You'll have to entertain them.
You don't even entertain.
Ru, calm down. I said everything.
Oh. Okay.
Go to the computer. On the computer, you will find a file.
Go to the computer, and... I see it.
Listen to it and break it down.
Wait, you want me to what?
Listen to it and break it down. They seem to like it.
A vocal reaction analysis to NANOWAR of STEEL'S Valhalleluja featuring Angus McFly from Gloryhammer.
Is that not what I just said? And remember, your distraction arrives forthwith.
Already? Why would you do this? What do you mean that... Oh my God, they're here already.
Good.
I don't know if I'm really up for, being around other people right now.
Remember, Ru, if you feel your resolve weakening again, remember the reindeer game. The reindeer game. The reindeer game.
When you're not really fine, but you just can't get into it because they would never understand.
I could do with something to lift my spirits,
Well, isn't that nice?
Yep.
I feel sorry for you. I absolutely hate it.
Thanks, G. I mean, I really just, She hung up. Okay. Hello. My name's Ru Julia Dolph. Let's get ourselves into the Christmas spirit. NANOWAR of STEEL'S, Valhalleluja. Oh.
Drowning in a sea of desperation,
and I sing a prayer to my Lord.
away from hope, a system black.
And I sing a prayer to my Lord.
I pray, yes, I pray to my Lord. I was down on my knees, permafrost on my feet. I was begging in tears, falling oh,
Odin. Vikings. Okay. He looks much happier. Ooh. chopping of the heads. I think I understand why Grinch-Julia picked this one now. Already we have a interesting mixture of influences lyrically but also musically. Let's start with what we first heard. So in the beginning, you immediately get this sense of Christmas and particularly church. We have some long sustained backing vocals. In this case, I actually really like our backing vocals because even though it's a choir, it leans more towards the kind of gospel singing that you might find within, let's say, African American communities or other cultures that predominantly use a first register based sound when it comes to their style of singing worship, which I guess makes sense considering that gospel and blues and soul and all of that have very similar tones, which tend to come from those specific communities as well. Those sounds use our first register, which is a full fold contact, so that it gives us that strength and robustness and the particular types of overtones that we hear that make it closer to speech. And that's in fact what it is. That first register is our speaking registration. It's called modal register or mechanism 1, meaning the first vibratory mechanism, full fold contact, versus our perhaps more traditional choral sounds that lean more towards our second register, which is sometimes called head voice, and it can be lighter in tone, although no less powerful. Opera singers, for example, use second register, and their voices are exceedingly powerful. Tone's completely different, but exceedingly powerful nonetheless. That's a second register, which uses a thinner fold contact. So instead of it being the whole fold, it's usually just the top. And then, of course, the pharynx or the resonating tract above it are what determines the sounds that we get. And so first register, speaking, if we're putting a speaking sound into our singing, it is, of course, going to sound different than if I was talking up here in my second register. Then the singing might start to sound a little bit more similar. Anyway, I thought that was really cool, how they immediately kind of put me in this feeling that, first of all, he doesn't want to go to Christmas dinner. And I can kind of relate to that right now, I think. Second of all, we've got that mixture of influences. The music makes me think of to your Christian type of religious background. I feel like I'm more familiar with the composition and the cadences and the harmonics and even the vocal choices that lean towards that modern Christian gospel sound in comparison to perhaps other older, more traditional classical leaning choral sounds, which of course you can hear with a lot of sacred music. If you go to any of the traditional churches, you can still hear this kind of singing done today, but it's a little bit different, of course. Anyway, because that picture is so clearly in my mind, I really wasn't expecting a sudden Norse mythology influence to be in there, which of course is Odin. So, I mean, I guess it makes sense of it being called Valhalleluja now, especially if you want to go to Valhalla, which is part of the Norse mythology as well. But now I kind of get the title a little bit more. Valhalla and Hallelujah. We have our Norse and we have our Christian or more traditional worship type of influences, of course, sung in a more modern style. Okay. Interesting. So, I haven't really spoken much to our lead vocals. So maybe it's time that I mention the lead vocals that are happening here. This sounds like a slightly different vocalist. I could be wrong though. The eye patch and the beard and everything kind of throwing me off. Of course, in the beginning, we were staying predominantly in our first register, like I mentioned before, that speech register. Sometimes it's also called chest voice, but I really don't like the terms chest and head voice. I feel like they're a little bit outdated because truly balanced singers are able to carry up qualities from the first register up fairly high, and then people might assume because of the pitch that they're in head voice. But anyway, that's a completely different. I'm gonna stop. He's mostly in his first registration, like earlier, full contact, very speech-like, very storytelling, and then since the chorus and now here. We hear something that's more in a belting tone. He's gone up in pitch, but we also have the involvement of distortion. So thinking of that first registration, full fold vibratory contact, that means that somewhere else in his vocal tract are little flappy bits, which are causing distortion or noise inside of his sound. Inside part of his sound. So you have your clean singing, yes, but then you can also have other things which cause their own little sound waves within the vocal tract. And so his distortion, I thought it was more growl-based earlier, but I might need to re-listen to this. Let me re-listen to this. The other thing I want to point out is something that he does with his tongue. Oh my goodness. So we have that tongue position. He's actually using his tongue root as well. If you don't know the parts of the tongue, you have the tip, you have the blade, you have the body, you have the back, or I guess you consider that the back of the body, and then you have the root, which sits down here. And when he went, we have this kind of covered quality to his singing, and that's because of his tongue root. Going back on that, you can also see his tongue shape actually changes on that high belt. Okay, so we're watching his tongue. I want you to see how much it goes. So we've got a big wide mouth, slightly pointed at the front, and then he's pulled his tongue root back. So you can see the middle of that tongue is depressed down, it's lifting at the sides, and the back is lifted as well, pulling backwards. He is being a big belty belt there. All right. And we've got a belty belt up on a B4. That is decently high. I can understand why his mouth is so big now. And if you're not sure why his mouth is so big, it's because as you go up in pitch, you want to alleviate potential tension within the resonating tract. And one of these ways to stop the harmonics from competing or being weakened, we want some proximity to strengthen our tone. We want to make the pharynx a little bit smaller, and one of the ways to do that is to open the mouth. So I'm going to go back so you can see that again. Watch his tongue shape. It's kind of soft and in his mouth on the first few belts. And then as he gets up higher, we have this big mouth and a little bit of a depression in the middle, and it's pulling back. Oh my goodness, his tongue just went, the front went all the way back. I've only ever seen that tongue stuff with, like the Will Ramos one take reaction, where you got to see his tongue kind of do funny things in the mouth. That was all, that was all the way back there. Okay, I should probably stop talking about tongues, hey, but it's so important. It's such an important articulator, and it affects the quality of your sound so much. If you have a disobedient tongue, This can ruin your timbre. If it wants to take control and do things, I mean, I guess it's just trying to work for you to give you the sound that you think you need, but sometimes we use the tongue in ways that are actually to the detriment of the sound that we need. Anyway, the tongue is really important, and you can tell when his tongue flips back that his tone becomes even more muffled. And it's not just because it's in the way, it's because the tongue root's able to depress even more, and this affects the resonating tract that everything else is moving through. This affects the harmonics that strengthen or weaken. This changes the timbre that we hear.
Ergonomics and the quality of the chairs are second to none. Our Father Odin, who art in IKEA, we understood your message. We're here to worship your creation. Please listen to our prayer.
So his prosody there is really amusing. It's almost like he's deliberately put a wobble or a vibrato into how he speaks. I wouldn't necessarily say what he did there was singing, but if we're not sure what prosody actually is, prosody is the pitch and inflection within our speaking voice. And so someone who doesn't have prosody, like let's say someone's experienced a brain injury and they're not able to process pitch anymore, they might speak in a monotone sound. They might always speak on the same pitch, and there's nothing else that you can do because they can't hear the pitch changes. But the opposite of that is people who have quite large prosodies, so the pitch moves in lots of different directions, and prosody changes is just one of the ways in which not just you as a singer, but you as a speaker can be more engaging. The timing of our words is important, yes. You don't want to speak too quickly. You don't want to speak too slowly, but also, in this case, he's moving his prosody around, and this is to draw interest to what he's saying. Again, it feels very preacher-like, which makes sense, of course. I just can't believe we're in the Church of IKEA. So listen again. This time, I want you to hear the variation, not just in his where his pitch is going, but also how he varies his tone in there. We have a little bit of a I'm shaking the voice. It's almost like a spoken vibrato, but it is obviously a little bit more forced. It's not exactly the same as going ba, which is different. You can hear the difference, hopefully. I want you to listen to that. So if you're a speaker and you want to be more engaging, prosody's your best friend.
Our Father Odin, who art in IKEA,
Who art in IKEA. There's actually some agility in his tones there. I don't know why I love this so much. I'm feeling much better. Let's just keep going. You'll hear it or you won't. I tried. Okay.
our Father Odin, who art in IKEA, we understood your message. We're here to worship your creation. Please listen to our prayer. Everybody!
Yeah, we've got this distortion. And in the sound too. I didn't mention distortion just then, but he has it in that spoken section. Of course, there's a great deal of distortion in the singing so far. Apart from the very beginning, I don't think I've heard any like purely clean singing, if I'm completely honest. So regardless of where that distortion is coming from, they're layering it over a first register sound, and that's all you have to remember, is they're using their speech register, there's distortion on top, whichever flappy bits. There are even times where it almost sounds more like a rattle, but I would have to go back and re-listen a bit more, and also listen to other examples of rattles, because rattle is a little bit different to other styles of distortion. You have things like growling, which use the epiglottic fold. You have things like rattle, which use the arytenoid cartilages. Then you also have flappy bits of mucosa, which is what some of your harsh vocalists might use. And then everyone's anatomy is slightly different, so sometimes it can sound a little different as well. Anything that I've sort of learned, I learned from my friend Anita, who she specifically works on extreme or extended singing techniques, rather. So I did have a chat with her about this stuff, but yeah, that's as far as I've kind of gone with it so far. So we've got distortion laid in there, but we've got distortion laid in there in both the speaking and the singing. So it's really like the singing is an extension of the speaking register, which I've already mentioned 12 million times. Let's keep going.
Everybody! All together! Pray for the comfort! Pray for your kitchen! With a big heart for the living room!
Oh my God!
Make your furniture great again!
Do we hear that? Like that mixy stuff. Sorry, I really love contemporary gospel music. I find it really fun, and there's always people who they mix up as high as they can go. Sometimes they're belting. That sounds a little bit lighter, but also it's not very dominant in the mix. So it could be that they recorded it and the person who's doing those little ad-libs is belting. I don't know, I wasn't there.
Make your furniture great again!
That definitely sounded more like a belt there. You even had a little bit of a cliche run towards the end there. They're really working these, like, I guess, cliched elements, or not even cliched, but common elements of modern gospel or contemporary gospel music or style. There's like a lot of oomph and power that they can put into their sound, and so this emulates elements of that. Like you've got our ad-lib singer in the background, and here one of the common elements is this little run that happens at the end. Flowing chords gospel choir. Yeah. Cool. That's really sad though that he had to come out of that delusion. I wish I could stay in a happy little delusion for this Christmas. But this was super fun. It raised my spirits. Did it raise your spirits? Did you get into the Christmas mood? I also really want to go to IKEA now. I'm sure there's something that I need in there. And even if there isn't, we all know, get the trolley when they're there, because even if you think you only need one thing, You don't want to be that person. And there's always that person that has to carry 15 million things in their arms to the checkouts because they were like, I just need one thing. But then, of course, we know what happens. We know what happens. You buy all the things. So it's really not that different to Christmas, I guess, because you do buy all the things at Christmas too. It was really, really fun. I had a very good time listening to this. And it was interesting to note the frequency with which that distorted belt was actually happening from our lead singer. And then, of course, the presence of the different influences, whether it was Norse, whether it was Christian, and then the different musical influences that come from I guess, Christian modern gospel sound, and then our heavier music as well, which I'm assuming is more along the style of what this band would normally do. This is actually my first time listening to NANOWAR of Steel. And my first time hearing Angus McFife, because I haven't listened to Gloryhammer either. So let me know. So I may have to do a little bit more research once I'm done. But I guess that's all I really wanted to talk about with this one. Thank you so much for being my guests today. If you enjoyed this evening's entertainment, feel free to click all of the buttons. Just smash them. Mash them until you're satisfied. All right, so quietly, we're going to go out the back door. If you see a man in a red suit, run. I told him I wasn't going to pull the sleigh despite the less than ideal weather conditions, so he's probably not going to be feeling very jolly. On my mark. 3, 2. Yes, I know. How much of that did you overhear exactly?
There is a plan B. If this doesn't have you feeling better, you can always go back. Acquiesce to their wishes, use it as a marketing campaign to gain notoriety, and then hold it over their heads for as long as you possibly can.
Sometimes you have to stop looking for the silver lining because they're using it to strangle you. Great. Love that. That's my favorite. Raise my spirit. Sure where I'm gonna be, but shh. Why am I even blathering on about this? Because it's important. Run.